All right. We're back. Everybody ready? Almost. Good enough. Close enough, I think. The time now being 11:16 a.m., April 24th, 2024. I'd like to call this meeting to order of Kane County's American Rescue Plan Committee. Clerk, please call roll for attendance.
Kenyon.
Here.
Bates. Here. Gums.
Gums here.
Leonard. Molina. Strathman.
Strathman here.
Surges. Tepe. Sanchez.
Sanchez present. For the first time in a while, I don't have any remote attendance requests, so we'll move on from that. What? I know it's kind of weird. People are logged in, but not on the committee and not present. So approval of the minutes, March 27th, 2024. I'll entertain a motion or
I would ask for unanimous consent.
question. Can you ask for unanimous consent? Any objections? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Public comment on agenda and non-agenda items. I do have a few people that signed up online. I'm not sure if they're agenda or non-agenda, and there are some people here in person that wish to speak. And the sign-up sheet was missing, so we'll be recognizing them as well. So I will start off with the people who I do have that were signed up online. Kathy Flesberg.
How was that?
Hello,
King, non-agenda,
it's on agenda.
on agenda item.
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to talk about some of these resolutions that will be voted on today. Boy, it seems ever since the health building got voted down, it's like money is burning a hole in someone's pockets. First, I don't see where any of these individual referendums for all the HVAC work was even talked about previously. When I looked at the previous months, I know at my very first meeting, I listened to a contract. You voted on a contract for HVAC at, I thought it was the jail facility, where a bid went to, where it went to someone that was $300,000 higher than just a $230,000 bid. And I even listened to the gentleman who won the bid not be able to explain how he told someone that he needed 8 weeks and 4 people, and yet his bid was over 500,000. So how are we gonna know if the bids that are attached to these referendum are going to the right people? I mean, there was no proclamations. We didn't see any discussions amongst you guys in regards to most of these resolutions. So it's just really confusing why these are being voted on already. You know, it's the transparency. Every time I talk about transparency. And at the last meeting, after I just saw what happened between the board not having a clue of what they were going to vote on, just because Rachel Sanchez called last Friday and we had to vote on something because sometimes we have to obey. It was mind blowing. It was absolutely mind blowing what just happened. But you know what? I'm glad it happened in front of us because I knew that this was going on where the chair was making decisions that she shouldn't be making. It's outside her pay grade. I mean, I think you should go to Springfield if you want to be making decisions like you are. And the citizens just have known this is going on, and now we know that the board knows it also.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
I just
Is
asked,
this on agenda?
yeah, it's on
She's
the,
referring to the projects that are on the agenda.
right. So I just hope that the board knows about what they're voting on today and that you've looked over everything, because we haven't seen anything until this was attached. And one of the jobs is a $7 million, a lot of HVAC work going on all of a sudden. I mean, it just seems crazy to me that we're doing this in these times when we're going to run out of money in what, 3 years? I don't know. Maybe we could get repairs instead of replacements and not spend so much money. That's all I have to say.
Next up, Brian Anderson. And is this on agenda or off agenda item?
Good morning, Brian Anderson, Sugar Grove, Illinois. Thanks, Mr. Sanchez. This is a non-agenda comments. I was not planning on speaking. I was actually going to leave after the last meeting, so I appreciate you allowing me to speak. I wanted these comments on the record, and I'm delighted that Madam Chair is here in the room. So my first comment was that, and I just want to state it clearly, I applaud Madam Chair wanting to suddenly have prudence and fiscal responsibility as she was addressing Treasurer Lausen. I just want to make it clear that I hope I don't see a snippet in a campaign message that she was approving being prudent all of a sudden for her voters. So I'll be coming back and challenging the board if I see a snippet of a campaign message. But I digress. Here's why I stayed. I want to thank Doobie. I want to thank Board Member Gums. What went on item N, the supporting state legislation authorizing counties to lease a building or land, that conversation was absolutely amazing. I've been coming to these board meetings for a year, one of the best board meetings I've seen. Time to dig in, review, challenge. You do need to be fiscally responsible on every light item. Now, here's why I came to speak. She kept, and let me reference that's Madam Chair, under the ruse of entertainment. It strikes me interesting if we want to have art shows or festivals or the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts. We have a $30 million public library in Aurora that sits idle. I'm down there quite often. So if we want to do something, maybe take a look at what we already have in Kane County, if quote unquote entertainment, Madam Chair, right? So we have a
Emerson,
$30 million building.
1 second. Is this germane to the American Rescue Plan Committee?
It is germane to the American Rescue Plan. I'm just about ready to wrap up because non-agenda item, according to Robert's rules and according to Mr. Shepro, which I respect highly on Robert's rules, you can speak on anything when it comes to non-agenda item. But again, I digress and I'm about ready to wrap up. I wanted it on the record because I think that we should be looking very carefully on what we're spending any resources. And as you've heard me before, whether we work with lobbyists or not, we're not beholden to what we want to do supporting state legislation in Springfield. I'm interested in what's happening in Kane County. Thank you, Mr. Sand.
Next up, Michelle Betag. Is this on agenda or off
On
agenda?
agenda, but I won't be long. Thank you for just this morning's meeting. I too am very appreciative when I see the conversations going back and forth and the packets actually being read and the expenses being cut. I know that we are thinking about how to use these funds. However, you know, I'm in agreement, like instead of using it on a $50 million, $30 million building, use it on expenses that we have to do like repairs or remediation, whatever. Madam Chair, unfortunately, you're bringing these horrible politics, Springfield and Washington, D.C. into our county. It's so obvious to, you know, the board now finally, no, I'm not being mean. I'm just saying the board, the public, the voters, the unions aren't happy because you're not getting your projects done, even though you're getting so many donations. I believe in all of you people to help Kane County citizens. I'm concerned about this lease business, the language being so vague and the urgency that it needs to be voted on. Honestly, it brings me back to the illegal question. Like, are you trying to set up house for these people to come? They're coming every single day. There's going to be you know, this is the beginning. And so it makes citizens question. And, you know, you can have your cheerleaders come in and say, you know, rah, rah. But at the end of the day, we're the ones holding the bill. I hope that this just isn't a commercial ad and that this is you honestly wanting to cut expenses, because everyone in Kane County is currently cutting expenses. Thank you for all you do.
Okay, there are a few members of the public that, again, there wasn't a sign-up sheet and I wasn't able to obtain one, but they approached me before the meeting. So I would ask them, I don't know their names, just please come up.
Thank you, Chairman Sanchez, members of the committee. My name's Mary Dixon. I'm the attorney for Geneva Township. 1 year ago, the township requested an ARPA grant to fund the expansion of its senior center. No response from the committee forthcoming, the township sent a second request for funding to all the members of the committee last December. With no response from the committee, the township reached out to Ms. Fonstock and asked for a funding application so we could formally get before the board. And the township was told an application is not provided until funding has been approved, which seems circular. More recently, the township received a call from Committee Chairman Sanchez, who informed the township that its request for funding was rejected for reasons that are incorrect. I reviewed the minutes of the committee and can find no reference to our request having been considered by the committee, nor any action this committee took to reject our funding request. Is that standard practice for this committee? In review of past minutes, when not-for-profit applications for funding were rejected, the not-for-profits were allowed to appeal the decision. We seek that same right. The township has reviewed the final rule applicable to state and local fiscal recovery funds, and our funding application fits squarely within the rules. Clearly, as you have recognized, funds may be used for capital projects that respond to public health and negative economic impacts of the pandemic. If funded, our expansion of the senior center would benefit a population of Kane County, which has been disproportionately impacted by COVID. In that we seek less than $1 million in funding, the federal rules provide that no written justification for the grant is required. Our funding request is related and reasonably proportional to the pandemic impact identified and reasonably designed to benefit the impacted population. That's what the rules require. We ask that this committee provide the township the opportunity for a fair hearing on its funding request by allowing it to appeal the decision, however that decision was made, before you expend all funds available. We simply want the opportunity to have a fair hearing, and we want a vote of this committee so we know why our application is being rejected. Thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning. My name is John Connolly. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees of Geneva Township. As you've heard, Geneva Township submitted a funding request to this committee over a year ago. When the township heard nothing in response, it submitted a second written request in December 21, 2023, which was mailed to each member of this committee and its administrator. It was not until several days ago that the township finally heard from Chairman Sanchez that his request would not go forward, stating a variety of reasons. We don't know how or who made the decision regarding the township's request for fund, but we want the right to appeal the decision because the reasons stated are simply incorrect. Our application of funding would help township pay for the expansion of the senior center. Each of you must know that the senior population was disproportionately affected by COVID. Recognizing the vital role seniors play in the health and well-being of our aging population, the Geneva Township Senior Center has been a lifeline for seniors facing the challenges of advancing age, including the loss of friends, family, and support systems. Unfortunately, the onset of COVID-19 pandemic significantly impacted our senior community, exacerbating feelings of isolation and loneliness. As you may be aware, the U.S. Surgeon General has identified social connection as a fundamental human need as essential to survival as food, water, and shelter. He warns that loneliness is far more than just a bad feeling. It harms both individual and societal health. Surgeon General said, given the profound consequences of loneliness and isolation, we have the opportunity and obligation to make the same investments in addressing social connection that we've made in addressing tobacco use, obesity, and the addiction crisis. Isolation and its attendant loneliness transcend all socioeconomic and racial barriers. I'm also an engineer, and I've been leading the senior center expansion design. When I first started as trustee in 2009, our membership number was 700. It's 1,600 now. It's going to grow. The member number is more than doubled. Our facility size, however, has stayed the same.
Sir, that is the amount of time for non-agenda items. Can you summarize? Can you wrap it up?
Sure, for sure.
Mr. Sanchez, it's only been 2 minutes according to my time.
Has it only been 2 minutes? Oh,
Yes,
sorry.
sir.
I looked at my clock wrong. You have one more
In fact,
minute.
I
My
did
bad.
time this. It was 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So
Okay.
if you allow me.
You can have
I'll-
35 more seconds if you need 20.
All
Yeah, go ahead and finish.
All right.
My
well, the
apologies.
expansion design is about 1,400 square feet. But we need a lot of interior work done, carpeting, HVAC systems and the like. I won't get into that. Third bathroom designed for ADA standards for our seniors. The 500K we requested from Kane County is needed now to get this done and upgraded for our seniors. In fact, if we were to do everything and complete it all, you know, the potential cost would be 2.5 million. We're asking for less than 1 million. The drawings are complete. They're in my hand right now. We're ready to go. With financial support, township can pay for the expansion of the senior center. It's small, but local important initiative meets the requirement of the grant by responding to the public health or economic impact on the public. Last paragraph. Please provide us with the information regarding the proper channel to go through to have our application be subject to a meaningful hearing and decision-making process. We have an obligation to our seniors to make this plea. Our seniors have earned it and they deserve it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Was there anyone else that was here to speak that had approached me previously? Okay. Thank you all for coming here today. We will be moving on. Discussion items. ARP committee reports, Ms. Fonstock.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanna, is it on?
Yeah, you might have to bring it close to you.
Yeah, I just want to say that the report on the fact that the ARPA Community Support Grant Program had close to $4 million in ARPA funds for 46 organizations. And I just want to let the committee know that all 46 organizations have received their reimbursements and the program is completed.
Oh, yay.
Yes, that is something to clap about.
Yay.
It's taken a little while, but the very first big thing that we did to take care of mental health service providers, homeless shelters, and food pantries, $4 million is now complete and closed. I think most of the entities closed out a while ago, but you know, they're small organizations, take some time, paperwork and all that. So a very good milestone to have reached and appreciate everyone's support through that whole process. Anything else of note on that, Ms.
That's
Fonstock?
it for me,
Okay.
unless you have questions.
Any questions from Ms. Fonstock on this month's report? It's included in the agenda. Hearing none, we will
Are
move
the other
on.
reports or
What's that?
talking about all the reports?
They're attached.
They're attached online. Sorry, the report's attached separately online. It's not in the actual agenda packet.
Okay.
But you knew that already, Vern. Come on.
I didn't.
Other committee reports or other committee matters. I really don't have anything at this time, but something that was brought up in public comment, I do think is worth addressing with Geneva Township. That is a project that we are aware of. The reason it had never reached the level of this committee's awareness is because it is a capital project. And while some capital projects are allowable under the final rule of American Rescue Plan Act, it comes with a lot of strings, as we all learned when we went through the very lengthy discussion on a potential public health facility building. Capital expenditures require a lot of reporting, a lot of monitoring and compliance checks, and to provide ARPA funds to an entity outside of the county is generally against our policy. We're not interested in going that route because of the high level of compliance risk that is involved. Because while all of us here may understand the rules of the American Rescue Plan Act, in 10, 15, 20 years, an entity outside of the county who we give capital money to may not be tracking those things. And if the county isn't taking their staff time to stay on top and monitor those things, we could risk losing that money and having to pay it back to the federal government, because all capital requests that are approved with ARPA money are not owned by the entity either approving it or awarding it to someone else. They're owned by the federal government, by the US Treasury. So it's not, here's $500,000 and go build your building and then that's it. Just make sure you give us the receipts. It's much more than that. It requires a lot of staff time, and again, brings us into a level of risk that we as a board have decided we don't want to assume that level of risk. So when it comes to certain projects that may have not reached the level of the committee, there are always a good reason. And even then, we have not had an open application process for quite some time. actually, really, the community support grant program that we just discussed that is closed, that is the only time we had an open application process that comes with a NOFO, a notice of funding opportunity. Anything that has come through outside of that has been through internal requests or entities that have approached us and we have had conversations with, and then we decided to bring it to the level of the committee because they were easily eligible. Things like Casa Kane County, for instance, we were able to provide them with $1 million. But that was, again, not part of an open application process. So I just wanted to clear that up for any confusion that there might be amongst the board members or the public. We would love to give money to so many worthy causes and organizations and projects. But some just come with a level of risk that is beyond what we as a board are willing to take up. So I just wanted to let you all know about that before we move on. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to try. I know it's dangerous.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry,
Gums.
Ms. Gums, did you have something?
I do actually. So we've heard today that there's been some back and forth, and I'm just going to push back a little bit on the notion that things were not brought to this committee. It's what the committee's designed for, is for us to all have that conversation. And I would like to push back because I don't think that's the way we should be doing things. I got an email 2 days ago from another organization, Fox Valley Patriotic, asking why they did not get an answer. I cannot find the documentation on any of these things. And when I'm asked directly, I don't have an answer for them. And that's problematic for this committee. So we need to resolve. They asked for an appeal process. We maybe should have that conversation. You did indicate that the community grant program was shut down. There were a lot of things that were shut down. But now we have a major shift in monies, right? So we had a project that's no longer going to happen, and there's a shift here. So I would implore this committee to have a discussion or conversation about how that appeal process could take place, because people are coming to us and they are soliciting. And yes, we do have, CASA came to us, but we now have other people asking for that. So I would look for your direction to figure out how we can have that conversation and see if there's any way we can do an appeal process to address those issues.
Well, I think what a lot of
As
this.
a committee, I think we should have that.
Yeah, and I
conversation.
understand. I think a lot of this, what you're addressing really comes down to that big project you referred to, the public health facility building, that we began vetting that project last year. And I think it took longer to really go through that process than any of us on the team thought it was going to take. And while we were going through that, we put things on hold as far as trying to allocate funds. And knowing that we were at least going to try and go down that road, we had to also have a plan B, right? So we wanted to go for things that we knew were going to be easily eligible in a short period of time. So that's what I'm going to be discussing next is kind of where we're at right now with looking at the remaining funds and understanding some entities have come to us. I can't speak specifically to the one that you just mentioned, to the details of it. I do believe it's something that was looked at by our team and potentially deemed ineligible, if I remember correctly, but we can follow up offline on that. Anything that has come to us that, to my understanding, that has been eligible has moved its way to the committee at some point. There are, I think, 1 or 2 things, maybe 3 that are going to be discussed today that are of that category that have come to us from either outside or internal entities that have not come to this level yet because we put everything on pause for the public health facility conversation. So you're talking the last 6 to 8 months. We've been waiting to find out what we were going to do. And now that we know we're not going after the public health facility building, we've got a very, very small window of time to figure out what to do with the rest of the money, because as you'll see shortly, there are some serious rules in place about allocating these funds. And none of our team really knew and could predict how long that public health facility conversation was going to take. So I don't think any of us were really expecting that it was in April that we were going to start figuring out what to do with the rest of that money. We were hoping it was going to be much sooner than that.
Thank you. And just to follow up, Mr. Chair Gums, just to that point, You know, it was also brought up that there are some projects that we are looking at today that they were, you know, the public has not been aware of. And I would, to that point,
Mhm.
we have discussed those projects, many times. The projects that we're going to be voting on today have been brought up. And I'll get into more detail on some of the pushback I have on a couple of those projects. But I wanted to articulate that this committee has discussed those things. We've also discussed them in development as far as our projects that are eligible. So
Yeah.
I applaud that. But I still, maybe offline, we can have a better conversation about a potential appeal. I applaud that we got the $4 million done, but if you recall, when we first started this, we wanted a lot more than 4 million for our community. So offline, we can have that conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. Anything else under other committee matters?
I have a committee matter.
Ms. Bates?
I am interested in moving forward the issues that I believe are under the revenue recoupment, that those line items have been postponed for maybe 2 years. And we want to get started on some of these, what we used to call internal requests, to make sure that those get moved forward soon. Please.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, I am going to share my screen and hope that it all works. Okay, so allocating the remaining ARPA funds. As you kind of got a little preamble there, we had to put some decision-making on hold because of the potential for the public health facility building project. Now that that has been voted down and we're going in a different direction, the entire time we were talking about that, we had to have a backup plan in case we get to this point where we're getting on in the year 2024 and we haven't figured out what to do with the money. We've got about 19 million, just south of $20 million that we have to figure out what to do with in a very short period of time. So we talk about allocating things, but the real definition under the Treasury's guidance is obligation or obligated. So when we're talking allocation, I think we're essentially meaning the same thing as obligated, but they put a few other things onto that term. So for obligation under ARPA, it means that it has to be approved formally by the board. There has to be contracts in place and there has to be money spent on the project. And that is a new requirement that was enacted last year. That is a little more restrictive for us because if all we had to do is just have contracts in place by the end of the year, that really kind of, we breathe a little easier with that kind of buffer time, right? But knowing that not only do contracts have to be in place, which can take months to do on certain projects, can be a multi-month ordeal, we then also have to spend money for that project by December 31st, 2024. If we don't do that, whatever money we were going to try and allocate, it goes back. We don't get to utilize it for our community. So that being said, we really are under crunch time. And I know as a board member, I don't like when things come forward and it's like, well, we have to act quickly because we don't have much time. Again, none of us could predict how long it was going to take to go through that conversation for the public health facility building. So here we are. What you're going to be seeing today is a combination of some projects that you already are aware of, internal requests, internal department requests, as we were calling them. Some projects that may have been mentioned, and in the majority of those being those that have been mentioned as Plan B projects, ones that we could identify easily under the ARPA rules that if we needed to, if we were running into a time issue, we could fill in with these projects. And I'm using these terms very loosely. So here you can see a chart, and I sent this out to you this morning. I'm sorry you didn't get it sooner. My apologies. But this chart shows ranking from the highest cost to lowest. All of the major projects that we're considering right now to help close out this program. This isn't revenue recoupment, so that's a separate conversation we're going to have. And we have about $7.5 million there. This is a list of project items that we're looking at for normal direct funding under ARPA. The ones in blue are the ones that you're seeing on today's agenda. So we have those here. Again, ranked from the most costly to the least. And then these are the ones that will be coming forward next month. Our goal is to essentially have almost every single dollar of ARPA allocated by the county at this May ARPA meeting, and then obviously it goes to the June county board for final approval. There will be some loose ends after that that we'll have to clean up. We have some previous projects such as contact tracing that we're still doing some of the accounting and bookkeeping, and there may be some other monies that come in that we'll have to allocate pretty quickly. But we do have other projects we can do that with if needed be. I know things have been mentioned to us like, oh, what about lead replacement lines in Elgin and Aurora and elsewhere? Great ideas, superb projects that I would love to vote for, but the lead time to really organize those efforts is great. And right now, if we had an extra 6 months, we could go after things like that in full gusto. But right now, we can't take the risk of trying to go down that road on a big, multiple IGA type project and then find out, oh, we're actually going to run into a timeline issue and we can't do it. And now we're out $20 million. So again, all the good ideas that have come forward, what it really does come down to is having to make some decisions about what can we do in the time that we have without risking losing the money that we've been given to utilize for our community. So that is essentially what we're looking at is a multitude of projects. And you can see a lot of these are building management. Why building management? Because we already know, based on our vast experience with our team and obviously Roger, Henry, and Heidi are here, we know that these projects are eligible under ARPA because our teams had to look at these rules over and over and over again. So they get a pretty strong sense of what we can do. They've been assessed by Ernst & Young. So all of these projects you're seeing before you, they have been reviewed. Risk assessments are included for all of these projects so that we know we're not running into any compliance issues with ARPA. We're not just scrambling at the last minute to throw some projects together and hope that it sticks. This was all well thought out months ago when we began going down the road for the the public health facility building. So again, you recognize some of these projects such as the Kane County Farm Resiliency Project. And that one's actually even coming under. It started off as a $1 million allocation that we provided a couple of years ago. It went up to about $2.2 million as the idea developed. As we got deeper into what is really eligible, what is the risk level of certain things under ARPA, they had to pull it back. So now the Farm Resiliency Project is under $1 million. So it's good to get the money out into the community, but just to show there has been movement on all of these projects that you've been informed of previously. Our program manager, Suzanne Fonstock, she's been doing a very great job of keeping in touch with everyone and finding out the status level of projects, finding ones that are not needing funding anymore, that have changed its scope in such a way that it's outside of ARPA and various things like that. So the rest of them, obviously the HVAC, a lot of HVAC and building improvements, very needed things in the county that we've been able to fund, but they're all eligible under ARPA. So the idea being we can get those reimbursements to those dollar amounts very easily without risking anything with the ARPA money, and the timeline issue is not existent, right? Some of these other ones, maybe we have what we're looking at here for next month, just to kind of give you a preview. The sheriff many months, actually over a year ago, I believe, began sending us information on a transitional housing and training center idea that he has, and he's working on that right now. So that's going to be something we're vetting it right now fully. It's almost complete, and we'll be talking about that next month. Pads of Elgin has been very vocal. They've come to us since the beginning asking for help. And most recently, their then director, Eileen McNamee, was again asking for more assistance. They still have very large needs. Elgin Township, they're looking at a situation where they ran into some PTEL issues with their 708 board. So they're just looking for some funding and considering some funding to help float them while they work on some legislative fixes. And then you have other building management projects. There may be one or two other things added to this list that aren't here, but essentially these are the majority of the money we have left that we can identify, right? Again, this isn't revenue recoupment, so there are some water resource projects and I believe some economic development projects. There are other things that we'll be talking about, and that will come next month, all the revenue recoupment. So it's outside of this. And that's what we're looking at today. So this list of projects, again, ranked in order from highest cost to lowest. And we'll go through these. And I know some of these are, will
Mr.
likely
Chair.
be simple, but we'll discuss. Mr.
Chair,
Tepe?
Just to clarify, your totals come up with all of the available funds that we currently know about, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah, and I'll go back to this chart.
Okay.
So you see that $19.2 million. That is, these aren't accounting audited numbers, right? But
I
that's our,
understand, I
right,
understand,
yeah.
yes.
Internally, we're tracking things. So
But it's
these are the numbers we're working with outside of revenue recoupment as well, which is about $7.5 million. So in total, we're looking at, $27 million or so of ARPA money that we have to allocate. But for direct spend, we're looking at 19.2 million. So before we get to the specific
Chairman.
project resolutions, is there any questions, any discussion? Ms. Bates?
I just have a couple comments. For people who are really disappointed about the lead pipes, there are other grants available. That individuals, residences can be searching for those lead pipe grants. Otherwise, I see these as, if we weren't doing this, I think this is a very practical, good way to spend this ARPA money. Otherwise, these projects would be coming out of the general fund or the capital fund. I don't usually think of HVAC as a very exciting project, but it is practical, and it is something that would have to come out of our own taxpayers' dollars. So I think this is a wise use of our federal windfall of the ARPA money.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Chairman
concerns?
Sanchez,
Ms.
just
Molina.
a question regarding the capital allocations here. How many of these were originally put into our budget for this year? Meaning they were budgeted under our general fund or capital funds and now are being budgeted under ARPA.
I don't know. That is a Roger Henry question. Because I think some or all may have already been completed from last year's budget. So,
Well, I think, if you wanted to, we could go through the list in order, probably. These are part of the 5-year capital plan. And in that 5-year capital plan, we propose to finance and the county board what we're going to do over scheduled replacements. And in this list, just immediately, we started the jail tower A and B and the sheriff's office HVAC, and some of the sheriff's components were started in an engineering study and plan. That engineering study and plan will give us the final bid documents that would go out for the contracts. We're preparing those right now to go out to bid. When those go out to bid, we will get the actual numbers associated with the projects. These are budgetary numbers that you're going to approve of as a budget. When we get the actual numbers, the board would have contracts and a resolution to approve of the actual construction. If you do not have ARPA funding this, we would be going through the 5-year capital plan, which is general fund. So the idea was, if we're looking for large capital projects that are eligible, because most of these are related to public safety, to health, they're related to the jail, which is occupied with people. We have resident people that are living in it. These are things that are essential to the air quality, to filtering the air conditioning. So judicial center replacement is also a budgeted project. We are in the process of replacing the 2 chillers at the judicial center. They were original equipment from over 30 years ago. And that's actually a capital budgeted project. So that'd be a reimbursement to the capital fund. The sheriff's office HVAC, again, is related to the study. So it's in the 5-year capital program, but it's not budgeted this fiscal year to replace. Same with the jail tower. Adult Justice Center domestic hot water improvements is the jail also. That's something we've been working on with Energy Environmental Water Resources for the past year. We need to change some circulation loops and some water systems in the building, and it's obviously related to the jail and the housing units that are there. And we believe that's eligible, and that would be something that we have to address through the capital program if we're not addressing it through ARPA. Can't speak to the farm resiliency kitchen. Again, kitchen and laundry area is related to the Adult Justice Center and the jail. Most of these are jail related or the occupancy of the jail. We do have a shooting range or a qualification range that we're looking at their HVAC systems, medical intake in the adult corrections. And then also the juvenile center is a juvenile facility where we have occupants that are living there, looking at their HVAC and air quality issues. These budgets in here are more related to construction or the actual work of replacing the systems with the new systems. I think some of the things that we're looking at is like cycles per hour, the filtration systems that are in the buildings, replacing and upgrading them. You get to the HVAC improvements for the 3rd Street Courthouse. That is something that I think we're still planning. We're not in the actual contract for that yet. So the 2023 and 2024 is being planned. So 2023 would be a reimbursement. We've already done the work. And we know that it was eligible. It was not requested as a reimbursement. And then the health department HVAC replacement, that's a reimbursement. It's reimbursement. We've already done the rooftop units on the health department. So some of them are obviously going to be things that we have done the work for. We know they were eligible and we're seeking reimbursement to the capital fund. And then some of them are in planning stages that'll be constructed. And like I said, without the ARPA funding, they would need to be budgeted in the capital fund over the 5-year replacement. So
Thank you. I'd like to see how much we are reimbursing the capital fund, just for us to know that we have this extra money in capital in case we needed to keep it in capital or if we need to move it to the general fund for future.
we could probably come up with, kind of the split of what is, I believe all of these would be capital funded. Some are reimbursement, some are future years. It might matter like which year we were going to incur the cost, because the jail projects, if we don't do it using ARPA funds, we would be doing probably the jail towers first because of the occupancy, and then we would move to some of the other areas maybe in subsequent years, because I don't know that we could afford that type of a capital investment in 1 year. Our current capital program is about $50 million over 5 years. So think $10 million a year that we could potentially get through. And that's going to be a challenge. I know I've been working with the finance officer, Kathy Hopkins, and to figure out how much can we expect in capital replacement. So that's going to be a budget question too for the 5-year capital plan. How do we go about addressing the capital depreciation and replacement schedules? They're significant.
Thank you, Roger.
Yep.
Ms. Gomes.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'd like to direct this to Roger. So I just have, I
Sure.
thought I was going to push back a little bit. So I have a couple of
Is
questions.
it about specific
Yes.
projects? Well, let's do that when we get to it.
Okay.
And we have the
enough.
discussion for each item. Mhm.
Um,
Ms. Bates.
Clarification, speaking to Ms. Molina's point, can I talk? Ms. Molina, were you in thinking that some of these items, some of this money should be moved from the capital fund into the general fund instead of being left in the capital fund? Is that your?
No, I think we're at this point in time as a budget, we need to make sure that we're looking at all available, revenue sources. And if ARPA can replace something that we placed in the capital fund, then that does free up things to the general fund and allows us not to talk so much taxes this year.
Okay.
That's my
Okay, I
end goal.
wanted to understand. Thank you.
To go along with that and speaking with Ms. Hopkins, I think our fear is when we get to the 2025 budget and we're trying to budget new capital for the next year to 5 years, if you have to take more money out of circulation from the general fund or try to find more funding, whether it's reserves or general fund or whatever it is, to maintain your assets and buildings, this would definitely help that 5-year capital plan.
Madam Chair.
Just a clarification, if I may, for Roger. Roger, were these deferred? Because you mentioned that some of these are 30 years old.
So-
Are we replacing deferred maintenance? Are we still doing catch up?
I think,
Like the yellow
you're,
houses?
I mean, you're in a 5-year plan that's about $50 million from condition assessments on, I mean, we're talking we're talking about a million square feet of buildings, 29 buildings. And we did the condition assessment with the master planning. And what Heidi and the team put together was a 5-year capital program. So we're reevaluating that every year. And we've been trying to pace ourselves and looking at, approximately 10 to 12 million a year in capital replacement for those buildings. A lot of it is heating and air conditioning that's original to the buildings. The jail facility has been operational since 2007. It was occupied in 2008. It's been running nonstop 24 hours a day, fully occupied for most of that time, and has the original air conditioning equipment with some repair work that's been done. The judicial center's chillers are original York chillers from the time it was constructed, I think 1992. So they're not the most efficient. One of them is in a state of disrepair right now, and we're waiting for the delivery of the judicial center chillers. That project would conclude this year out of the capital fund. So we have it budgeted right now in the capital fund. So this would be reimbursement to the capital fund for the chiller replacement. They're 2 400-ton chillers that have a cooling tower outside. I mean, it's a massive, I think it's 2 400 tons with a chilling tower. And
It's a lot of tons.
yeah, so and
Ton of tons.
I would just say, that we have some things going on right now for the schedule where the time to receive the equipment can take up to a year. We ordered the chillers, it'll be a 56-month time frame. So when you talk about committing a budget, which this is a budget to do these projects or funding, it's not the actual agreement to authorize the contract to do the work. So we're just setting the money in place so that we can go forward with the bids with finance and purchasing to get the actual prices. These were provided to us through engineers and architects, what they estimate we would actually spend. So, but yeah, the chillers are a big project this year.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Bates and then Mr. Ross.
So, will we be able to complete this by December 20,
Yeah.
okay.
The
You said 56 months, but we
ordered them probably
started
6
this.
months ago. They'll be here. The idea is in the fall, when we switch from cooling to heat, we're going to change them. We'll have the chillers taken out and we'll put the new ones in, cut over, and we'll be done this fall and once the hot weather goes away.
Yeah, and to clarify, we don't have to finish the project by the end of this year. We just have to have money spent on it.
But we have to have it finished by the end of 25.
2026.
2026.
Yes.
December
Okay.
2026.
That's still not 56 months. You said
we
the
need
order
to-
time
I
was
think
50
he meant 5 to 6 months.
No, the original order was about 6 months ago and
Oh.
it was about a year, 56
Thank you,
weeks.
Ms. Molina.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. 4
Sorry, I
years.
should've probably just
and
said
8
a year.
months.
It takes a year to get the equipment. Yeah, put it that way.
If for whatever reason, like it's not
Yeah.
moving fast, we can just buy some lug bolts or something and then we've got money spent on the project. So we'll be
Now,
good.
now I'm feeling a little foolish. Thank
And
you very
We'll
much.
tell you, some of the equipment's actually starting to come in faster. So, we've seen some things moving quicker.
All right.
Mr. Roth and then Mr. Leonard.
Okay. A clarification. Roger, you said the 5-year budget plan is 50 million and it's 15 million this year, which we have funded.
I'd have to look at the exact numbers. It's about 12. I think.
Okay, let's
12.
say 12.
Yeah.
And I remember in the budget discussion, we don't necessarily have dollars allocated for the next 4 years after that. Is that correct? That's one of our issues
So
in the
the-
budget.
You have the budget and then you have future years, which would come from the fund balance or from, usually at the end of the year, if you have, excess, dollars over your expenditures, you would move those to capital as one-time funds.
Right.
Or you move them to reserve funds, right? So you have reserve funds, you have these excess funds that usually if you're under budget, you move into capital for one-time expenses. And that's the $1 million question. So
Well,
to
and that's
speak,
what I'm
right?
trying to get up on the table
Yeah.
here, because we got the money
Yeah.
for this year, but we don't. And so let's,
Yeah, this would help, to provide reimbursement to the capital fund.
right.
So you'd have more
So-
money
so-
for next year's replacements or if the board were to decide they needed the money for, it is the board's discretion, but
I mean, so we don't have any money set aside for the next 4 years after this year, correct?
I don't believe the capital fund is sufficient for the 5-year.
And that's what I just want to get, because we're saying we want to move it to operation and we'll have to make that decision. But if a chiller goes out in the jail, you got to kind of do something. So it's not like you can say, here's a blanket or here's a
I think
fan.
that policy decision is something that
Right.
finance is going to.
So that's just something we need to
during
be
the
aware
budget.
of. We don't want to be real flip, say, oh, we'll just take it. I'm
I
just,
agree, Mr. Roth, but what I'm
Okay.
saying is that this provides us options,
oh,
which
yeah, no,
think
and I don't disagree,
we
but
need
it's
to
not,
review all the options on the
right,
table.
we shouldn't make a predetermination that,
This is Mr. Berman's committee will be talking about that, I'm sure, as we go along.
they will.
Mr. Leonard, you had a question or a comment? You still don't want to ask the question even though it's been answered? Come on. All right, now I'm just, okay. Yeah, I think we should do a task force to investigate the question. Let's do this. Okay, any other questions just on this high level overview of the resolutions in front of us? All right, so let us move on. We do have the conversation on FY22 lost revenue. I'll just cover that briefly. So basically, every year we do have the option to utilize the formula given to us by the Treasury Department to allocate some of our ARPA monies as revenue recoupment. I don't know if we were to do that, that puts more money into the revenue recoupment pile that takes away from these projects here. So really, it's kind of like, is this something that we want to do as a committee to recommend and a board to approve, taking money out of these projects to put into revenue recoupment? And then we have to see, well, can some of these go to revenue recoupment? Is it 6 of one, half dozen of another? I'm sure, maybe there are some funds that we could technically replenish with revenue recoupment money, but that also takes money away from these projects that we're considering. So if you would like, I can ask our finance department and Director Hopkinson to give us an overview of this idea at next month's meeting. We weren't thinking we were going to be taking revenue recoupment this year at all. So we do have to actually make a decision one way or the other. Mr. Tepe.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Although essentially I agree with you, I think we should have it on the discussion because if we move it to revenue recoupment funds, then we can use it for any purchase and there are no restrictions associated with it.
Not quite no restrictions, but essentially it would take money away from these projects, and whether or not we would want to put these projects then under revenue recoupment, it's not going to change all that much as far as I'm aware of reporting. I mean, there's a little simplification that occurs, but I don't know if that's something that our staff is requesting. Mr. Roth?
Roth, here, question. If we run into problems, some of these projects, and we're not going to get them at least started by the end of the year, could we switch it over to lost revenue? And is that a quicker process just so we don't lose the money?
I don't think that takes us out of the requirements for spending money on the project. So it's not an eligibility issue. It's really just time.
No, but you're using it for a different thing. And if it's easier to capture lost revenue, like you can do it in I'm simplify it, Susan, but as an example, 2 weeks versus it's going to take 3 months to do the capital project requirement. And we're getting to October or whatever, and we realize, hey, these 2 projects, we're going to lose the money because we're not going to get the requirements met. Could we use it as lost revenue in order not to lose the money?
Yeah, well, if we put into revenue recoupment, we still have to have something that we're
I
obligating.
understand.
So I think what you're describing is kind of a plan B to the plan B.
Yeah,
I think it's called Plan C.
it's called Plan C.
Yeah, well, yeah, just saying it's lost revenue does not mean it stays there and we can figure out what to do with it whenever we want.
No, but I'm saying we won't lose the money if we can say it's
Yeah,
lost
we have
revenue.
to. Mr. Feinstock, can you address that? Yeah, please.
The recoupment funds, it still has to be spent, obligated and spent by 26, obligated by
Right, but that
24.
gets us
Yeah,
past 24.
No, it still has to be obligated in 24, she's saying.
Right.
has to be allocated.
So
It's easier to do that than some of these capital projects, like we find we're not going to be able to meet the requirement.
They still have to go through the procurement process.
And I'm just saying, is
Yeah.
that easier? That's
No.
just the question. Okay, if it's not, then
It's-
never
it-
mind.
Really, it's just more complicated
Okay.
to just switch the money over there, and then maybe there are a
Okay.
couple
Right.
you
I
know,
just, I
boxes we
wanted to
don't have to
ask.
check over there, whereas
Yeah.
that's why we selected these projects, because we were able to identify that, yeah, given the timelines that we're operating under, we can
Yeah,
make
no,
these
that
happen.
was just the question.
So
thank you.
if, Ms. Bates?
I believe that part of the discussion right this minute is, should we have a discussion next month about recoupment? And my question, I think maybe yes, because I believe there are very strict rules about what can be recoupment and what can be non-recoupment. Isn't that true? It sounds like you're sliding them back and forth, and I think there are more restrictions than we're discussing right now.
When you go under lost revenue, it's considered government services. So if you can justify it as a type of service that the government would provide otherwise, then that it is allowable. So there is, in that sense of categorizing it and
Mhm.
identifying like the eligibility code, there is a little ease there. But everything else is the same for revenue recoupment. All of the procurement, all of the deadlines, you know, the obligation deadlines and requirements are still going to be there. So again, it's almost like 6 of one, half dozen of another. Do we need to do that? But I can ask Ms. Hopkinson or her team to present on this at next month's meeting if you'd like.
It sounds like it's a non-issue then. What is the importance? What is the significance if it doesn't make that much difference?
Well, that's kind of, I guess that would be my point if I were going to have an
Okay.
opinion on the matter, but really, we're just looking at timeline issues, and if we move money to revenue recoupment, then we got to say, okay, what works here, move it over there. It's just, there's more steps involved.
It complicates.
It complicates
Do
things.
you have a recommendation or Ms. Fonsack? Okay, I think we should go with what we have.
That's staff recommendation, yes. Mr. Leonard, did you?
No, I was just gonna
Okay.
say, I think the recommendation
is
is
done.
here
Yeah.
for the April
Mhm.
ARPA meeting, and I'm in agreement with it.
Okay.
All right, anything else on this high level overview before we get into the specific resolutions? And hopefully go faster than Mr. Berman's committee. The challenge is on. All right. Just so you know, state and local fiscal recovery funds is going to be mentioned in all of these. That's the under ARPA, that's the section that we really operate under, but ARPA is just more recognizable. So I'm going to say SLRF for those. So if you hear me say SLRF, that's what the term we use. So I don't have to read every single word on all 15 of these. Okay, resolution authorizing the use of SLRF to fund Association for Individual Development, A-Town Boxing in West Aurora School District 129 for the Kane County Health Department, ARPA Behavioral Health System Improvement Initiative. I'm seeking a motion and a second.
Fund.
Oh, yeah, Blair, I'm going to stop sharing if you can.
Molina will move.
Gums will second.
This one actually is kind of a sub approval underneath the big mental health, behavioral health initiative that we approved of $9 million for the public health department. So as they're going through their process, there are certain things that they're going to have to come back to us for approval and authority. And that is what this one is. Mr. Isaacson is here if you guys have any question on this particular project.
Molina.
Malene?
Thank you, Chairman Sanchez. Yeah, if Michael, could you just provide us with an overview of how this is going through your department and what needs to come to us and what doesn't? Just like an overview of the $9 million that you're overseeing.
Sure, absolutely. So this represents an initial request for proposals that was put out specifically bolstering some of our violence prevention work that's going on in the community. So this was done through a competitive RFP where we then selected the vendors that do appear in the resolution. For the remainder of the money, we have a new RFP that we've been working with the ARPA team and the state's attorney's office. It's going to be released next week, where we'll be identifying other vendors who will be providing services in the community.
And then do all of those vendors then come back to us after you review them, or how is that? That was my overview question. How is that going to work?
Process-wise, for Susanna.
I was gonna say, because the committee is approving the 3 agreements.
You got to get real close to the microphone on
Yeah.
those. Sir.
No, I'm saying the committee is approving the 3 agreements. Yeah, with the vendors. That's what's happening today.
My question is the 9 million that was already approved for the health department to do the behavioral initiative. Does that 9 million then come to us individually to review each project? Or do you have the oversight to approve that $9 million that was already allocated?
Yeah, what is it that we have to get approval for?
Again, the
Just these
committee is approving
agreements?
the agreements,
Yeah.
going into an agreement with these three vendors that the program identified for this specific purpose.
So when they make arrangements with other organizations, an agreement is formed, a legal binding document, that's the approval that we have to give at that point.
Okay, so the funding they approve, we're just approving the agreement between the two entities.
Mhm.
Correct.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
So in summary, and just to make sure we're on the same page, we're following the regular purchasing rules. If it was a typical health department project, we'd go through public health committee, but because these are ARPA funds, we're originating here with the ARPA committee.
Did that answer,
Yeah, that answered my question. Thank you.
Tepe and then Kenyon?
These agreements can go on for the next several years.
Correct.
So if we don't have to worry about committing these funds by the end of this calendar year.
We do need to obligate the funds.
So you need to obligate the funds. And you're asking for, okay.
Yeah, so we approved the overall $9 million for the program. And there are sub-approvals within that program that have to come before us before the end of this year. So that's that part of the obligation definition where it has to be contractually obligated. There has to be contracts in place and then money being spent. So that's what you're seeing here as part of that process. This is the contractual side of it. And then they're going to buy some staplers if it runs long. Yeah.
Hoping we didn't have to do that.
For questions on this?
How
Oh,
much-
Mr. Kenyon,
How
sorry.
much will be spent here in this one program?
800.
I mean, you say 9 million, but how much of that goes here?
So these three agreements should be $51,000, close to $51,000.
Yeah, and not all of that $9 million is going to things like this. There are different
Understand.
categories of that. If we
Page-
need a refresh on the program at some point, we can
Yeah,
get that from Mr.
absolutely.
Reyes.
Page 10 shows the dollar amounts, $51,600.
Yeah.
And we have staff beginning on Monday, so we're just building this program up right now. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and things are looking good from what I hear.
Very
Yeah.
good.
We're making progress on this. So, okay, any other questions or comments on this resolution? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next resolution authorizing use and transfer of SLR funds from Lost Revenue Recoupment Fund 356 to General Fund 001 to Economic Development Fund 400 to financially support the launch of an economic development organization for Kane County. I'll entertain a motion in a second.
Tepe moves.
Strathman seconds.
Okay. This one obviously is coming from revenue recoupment, but it's one that has been before us before, and we had to move it around a few times. It's not a shell game, I promise. Mr. Van Kerkhoff, talk to us about it.
Sure. Good afternoon. There's a presentation in your packet. Claire will put it up. If you would like, I'd like to cover a few things just historically, because it is a sizable request. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder, back in 2021, the county board by resolution approved these among the other department internal projects. These projects that the development department proposed, we called them internal external projects because these were all funds we wanted to see pushed out for programs we were already working with. And we're very grateful for that. Fabulous Fox Water Trail, the manufacturing program, tourism, those have all been approved and are under contract with outside vendors. You have a couple this morning. One is the food and farm resiliency, which is the next item on the agenda. And as Chairman Sanchez pointed out, that's ended up being much smaller than the initial set aside. But this particular request is related to the project economic development strategy and organization for Kane County. Back when these were approved, we did, along with other departments, got the message that not to just look at funding these projects with ARPA funds, but to continue to go after state and federal grants. And our planning division in that time period for these projects has applied for and received almost $1 million in outside grants to help these programs as well. The in the case of the economic development strategy and organization for Kane County, one of those grants paid for the strategic plan, which was the subject of the committee of the whole last month. Next slide, please. So here's some of the history. Just we applied for the grant, the strategic plan was done, and their main recommendation, confirmed our sense that we needed to launch an economic development organization for the county. Next slide, please. This map you've seen before just illustrates how we are a standout in the region, particularly among sizable counties not having such an organization. We have, back when we got the grant, had 26 layers of support from municipal and community partners. It continues to be a high level of support. Next slide, please. This is a new slide. I just wanted to illustrate two things. One, that many of our surrounding counties have organizations. You can see their logos. Many, if not all of them, receive some annual funding from the county boards and municipalities as investors and partners with the private sector, but the bulk of their budgets are from the private sector engaged in the organizations. Next slide, please. So that's why we've been saying that our efficiency of being involved now with the Greater Chicagoland Economic Partnership, along with the countywide economic development, will have high impact with maximum efficiencies. Next slide, please. I'll go through these quickly. You saw most of these at the committee of the whole from our economic development strategic plan presentation. Next slide. Just wanted to highlight, these are some of the things that an economic development organization would do. Next slide. Some of the EDO strategies. The strategic plan will be provided to the new EDO basically as a gift and a roadmap for them to get started. Next slide, please. So an economic development organization, this we haven't talked a whole lot about before. It's a public-private partnership, be organized as a 501c6. There'd be an independent board of directors, independent staff, which would be hired by that board. Other EDOs in the area have annual budgets of 1.25 to 1.5 million. And the 5-year goal of having about 25-75% private funding. Next slide, please. So the ask with this request is to use the revenue recoupment funds to provide the sort of the seeding operating funding in order to form the organization, go out and recruit a dynamic board that represents our diverse economy and diverse population. And then they would have the assurance that they could go ahead and develop the organization, hire the staff, begin the activities with funding in place to cover those costs. And then after that 3 years, have transition to a public-private mix of the funding of the operation. And these funds would be transferred to Fund 400 Economic Development. They would be earmarked as we recruit people to be part of this new organization. And then they could count on that as they develop their budget and then request the actual use of those funds. Next slide, please. So with that, I'd happy to answer any questions that you have. I also have John Gruling, who's been our economic development advisor, ran the Will County organization for many decades here also with his expertise.
Any questions on this project? Mr. Leonard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one, Mark. With respect to the public and private funding, the 25%, 75%, where are you on that right now? Has there been any progress made on that yet?
Sure. So right now this represents 100% public funding, the county board putting this money forward. So it's kind of like you do a campaign and someone puts the big gift forward so everyone else rallies around it. That's kind of what this action is doing, is setting that aside. So we talk to the private sector. They start putting in their amounts, realizing that it has to grow in membership and in contributions over this 3-year period.
So during the 3-year period, we're going to go from 100% public to 25% public, 75% private.
That's kind of a 5-year goal, but certainly by the end, I mean, the organization's going to have to, that's the onus on them then to recruit those additional investors in the private sector, produce results, in order to continue, on the operating budget that they established.
Ms. Bates.
Being a member of the Jobs Committee, I've been here in economics. I've been hearing about this a lot, but aren't we already doing much of this? Why has this money already been in use, or is it still coming in the future?
So no, there is not currently a countywide organization doing the things that the other counties are doing. This has been myself and Chris Toth and our advisor, John Grueling, doing what we can in the interim. And John's been doing a great job, particularly working with taking advantage of our regional partnership. But there's so much more that can be done.
So who's been paying, how have we been paying for John's? Is he coming out of ARPA money or just your budget?
No, he's being paid for out of Fund 400 Economic Development.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Van Kerkhoff? All right, this is a great project. It's taken a little while to get to this point, and it's good to see. So thank you, Mr. Van Kerkhoff, for
Oh, thank you. We're so
updating
appreciative.
us on what's happening. All right, with no other questions or comments, clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Gums,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Tepe,
That'd be yes.
Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes. Yeah, very good one. Next up, resolution authorizing the use of SLURF to fund the Kane County Food and Farm Resiliency Project for the Kane County Development and Community Services Department. Need a motion and a second.
Strathman
move it.
moves.
Strathman moves, Kenyon seconds. This again, coming underneath development, we have Mr. Van Kerkhoff to walk us through it.
Sure, and I want to credit Matt Tansley here on our staff. He's really the brains behind running our previous grant programs that we did with farmers using different funding, and has put together a proposal before you this morning to use the ARPA funds to really supersize what we've been able to do before and impact many more farmers. The presentation is on your website that was given at Agriculture Committee. Given the time, I'll just offer to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, we've done a grant program before. We had some small county funds involved, and we had other financial investors. Compeer, I believe, is the organization. We're able to do $1,000 grants to, right? It was $1,000 grants, correct? Before?
Yeah, we're doing a matching grant. We've done a couple different versions, but this
Okay,
is
yeah.
basically a supersized, high impact
Mhm.
program that we're looking to put together. And we would be running this internally. We did look at working with outside partners and landed on working on this one internally. So again, I want to thank Matt Tansley.
Yeah. So we're looking at up to $25,000 grants for local farmers, which will really do a lot to help support that industry and help. I mean, we've got such a great opportunity in the western part of Kane County to be leaders in local food. So this kind of project and expenditure really helps move us in that direction. So Ms. Bates.
I was thrilled that our farmers were so excited with $1,000. I mean, can't go very far, but they were still very grateful and thrilled. So this will be even better for sure.
That's the idea. I know Mr. Kenyon's in support of this one.
There's no bad money.
No bad money spent on farmers. You got it.
$1,000 is good.
Yep, they were very
Any other
grateful
questions or
for that.
comments? All right, hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard, Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Tepe,
That'd be yes.
Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes. Okay, now we move on to what you saw on that list. These are all the ones we just voted on are things that have come before us previously. Now we're starting on that list that is new. That is part of our Plan B arrangement. So I will, we have a resolution authorizing the use of SLURF to fund jail tower A and B HVAC system improvements for the Kane County Building Management Department. I'll entertain a motion in a second.
Bates moves.
Strathman seconds.
Okay. Any questions on this? I know Mr. Fonstock gave a bit of a high level overview of what it is and the need. Was there any other specific questions, Ms. Gums?
Thank you. This is what I wanted to push back on a little bit, just maybe clarification is needed. Oh, there you are. So looking at our 5-year capital plan that was presented before, 24 indicated 11.6 million, 25, we did 8.2 million, and then 26, 8 million. My question is this, so we identified that the HVAC systems obviously need to be fixed or replaced or whatever the words are that you want to use. But I guess my concern is when we have other organizations asking us for support from this committee, and we've identified that some of the HVAC systems don't need to be replaced until 26, 27. I don't know where I'm going with the question other than to say, I support this. I think I was one of the first people to say, let's fix everything we got now. But having said that, are we doing projects that don't need to be done right now? Because we've identified that they don't need, I mean, in the 5-year, we identified they don't need to be done right now. I don't know if that does that make sense?
This is Roger from Building Management
Thank you.
again. The capital plan that we put together last year, we've been reviewing, revising it as we do the condition assessments, and we've been working with the architect and engineering company on the jail and sheriff's buildings specifically. So they are giving us like pre-plan estimates for these projects. And originally, you know, in that capital plan you're referencing, I think we were at about 40 million, 41. And this next year for 2025 and all of the work we've done going through the buildings, it is going to be considerably higher than that. And that's just because as we've hired a new facilities and management team for buildings, and as we've gone through the buildings in the last year, we've discovered a lot of things that we didn't know at the time when we did the 2024 plan. So you're starting to see more and more capital depreciation and replacements. You know, whether you schedule them in 25 or 26, the years, I think many of these things that we're talking about, we're going to try to get them bid and contracted and actually start working on, you know, ordering and paying for the equipment. But the installation won't happen until 25 or 26 just because of the timing of it. So you're looking at planning that's going to take a year to 2 years to actually execute. So while we're talking about budgeting for it now, and we're talking about spending money on this project this year, potentially, these will be multi-year projects running well into 2025 and probably into 2026. Our goal would be to finish early in 2026, so we have plenty of time for finance and all the auditors to figure out the invoices and receipts and make sure we reconcile. I will tell you that, you know, it is a large undertaking to obligate and spend this kind of money and to document it the way ARPA is requiring and the way the audit would require. So we're very comfortable with getting this done in the time frame that they have. It will, I think, be a contribution to the capital depreciation or the capital program that the county has, which is, it's going to be in excess of $50 million when we show it to the county board this year. I will agree that you have many policy decisions to figure out how the board would like to address that or how they want to handle it. I don't know if 5 years is enough time because of the amount of money involved, but the buildings are not getting newer. Many of the buildings that we have are 30 years plus in age, and they have a lot of heating, air conditioning, water system issues, roofing. You know, and you just, over time, you have to do those things.
Did that answer your question, Ms. Gomes? Or address your concern?
It did clarify some things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't want to say I'm not
Sure.
supportive of this. It's just, you know, there's timeline things here and, you know, priorities. Like, are we replacing something that does not need to be replaced right now? We
Yeah,
don't want to do that, right? So,
specifically the jail, you know, being built in 2007 and you're now in 2024, this work won't be done for another year at least. So you'll be in 2025, 2026. I mean, you'll be at close to 20 years. In talking with the heating and air conditioning vendors that we use, which we have 3 of them, they've all told us on a facility that's 15 years old, commercial air conditioning equipment that has, you know, had its own maintenance issues over the years for various reasons. At 15 years, we should be scheduling the replacement of that equipment. And they're saying that to be proactive because we have people that are living in the jail 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if when we have an issue, it is an absolute emergency to heat or cool that place because you can't let them go. You can't just turn them out and say, well, you're gonna have to find another place to sleep tonight. We have to heat it or we have to cool it like that night, no matter what. So we have some contingency plans where we bring in temporary cooling, but being, running 20-year-old equipment and having 3 HVAC vendors telling us you should schedule replacement. When we tried to do the service maintenance on the judicial center chillers, we took one of them apart to do the condition assessment. And the question was whether or not we wanted to spend nearly the equivalent of buying a new one to rebuild it and refurbish it. And we're like, okay, we need to stop and evaluate whether we try to rebuild the 30-year-old York chiller or petition the board to replace them. And there are far more energy efficient equipment available that will save us money. We've been working with environmental water resources, try and make sure that we get energy efficient units. The biggest thing is improving the air return, air quality, ventilation, getting the proper filtration, high MERV filters, those types of things to get better air quality in the facilities is, and I think that's the connection that has made this related to the pandemic.
Ms. Molina, then Ms. Bates.
Thank you, Chair. Roger answered some of my questions, but I just want to reiterate that I consider this really important. And we saw during COVID how people who are confined in small spaces together, and we had our employees there. We didn't shut down the jail during COVID. And if that happens again, we want to make sure we're creating a safe environment for all of our residents who are residing in the jail and also for our employees. So I thank you, and I'm glad this is coming through ARPA funding.
Ms. Bates.
I think that the effort that you're doing right now will help to avoid emergency breakdowns, like you
Yeah.
said, which are so much more expensive than trying to do these things on a routine maintenance basis. So I think it's a good idea.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
It's yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Lena, yes.
Strathman,
Yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes. All right, next up, E, resolution authorizing the use of SLURF to fund judicial center replacement chillers for the Kane County Building Management Department. I'll entertain a motion in a second.
Bates
Leonard
moves.
moves.
Bates
Seconds.
moves, Leonard seconds. Any questions on this project? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes. Resolution F, authorizing the use of SLURF to fund Sheriff's Office HVAC system renovations for the Kane County Building Management Department. I'll entertain a motion in a second.
Leonard moves.
Leonard
Strathman
moves, Strathman seconds. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
And yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes. Resolution G, authorizing the use of SLURF to fund Adult Justice Center domestic hot water improvements for the Kane County Building Management Department. Entertain a motion in a second.
Kenyon.
Kenny moves,
Leonard seconds.
Leonard seconds. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
It's yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes. Resolution H, authorizing the use of SLURF to fund kitchen and laundry area improvements at the Kane County Justice Center for the Kane County Building Management Department. Entertain a motion in a second.
Strathman moves.
Strathman moves,
Kenyon seconds.
Kenyon seconds. Questions, comments? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Yes.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes. Resolution I, authorizing the use of SLURF to fund shooting range HVAC system renovations for the Kane County Building Management Department.
Leonard moves.
Kenyon seconds.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes. Resolution J, authorizing the use of SLURF to fund medical intake at the Kane County Jail HVAC system improvements for the Kane County Building Management Department.
Strathman moves.
Strathman moves.
Kenyon second.
Kenyon seconds. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Melina,
Melina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Kenyon. Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes. Resolution K, authorizing the use of state and local fiscal recovery funds. Oh, I just read it. To fund HVAC system improvements at Juvenile Justice Center for the Kane County Building Management Department.
Bates moves.
Bates moves.
Strathman seconds.
Strathman seconds. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Melina,
Melina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes. Resolution L, authorizing the use of SLURF to fund 2024 HVAC improvements at the Third Street Courthouse for the Kane County Building Management Department. Entertain a motion in a second.
Strathman moves.
I'll second.
Ms. Kenyon seconds. Any questions? Discussion? None. Clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Melina,
Melina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes. Resolution M, authorizing the use of SLURF to fund 2023 HVAC improvements at the Third Street Courthouse for the Kane County Building Management Department. Entertain a motion in a second.
Kenyon
Leonard
would move
moves.
it.
Leonard
Kenyon
seconds.
moves, Leonard seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Melina,
Melina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes. Finally, Resolution N, authorizing the use of SLURF to fund Health Department HVAC replacement for the Kane County Building Management Department. Entertain a motion in a second.
Strathman moves.
Bates, seconds.
Strathman moves, Bates seconds. Discussion? Hearing none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Melina,
Melina, yes.
Strathman, Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes. And that is one way to spend $14.9 million.
Much more fun than that.
I mean, you could, but no need for we have nothing under old business. No need for executive session. I need a motion.
And move we
to
adjourn and
adjourn.
get
Mr.
back to
Kenyon,
our work.
Second.
I have a
Ms.
comment.
Bates, all those in favor say aye. Wait, what? What?
You talked.
You have a comment?
I want to thank Ms. Gums for bringing up the idea. Was there a higher good? Was this the highest good?
Hey,
I,
Bill.
I think we
Bill.
did a good job. So thank you.
All right. All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Aye. We